Okay, so in the last video, we got the camera, I want to say rotating, but it's really orbiting around the origin. And we did that with our camera function. That's a built-in function in p5js, which lets you set the location of the camera, the origin of the camera, which is also the lookout point. It's the point the camera is aimed at, and the orientation of the camera, which is a vector that specifies which direction is up. So we set it here in setup, but then it gets used down here in the draw function. And basically the draw function runs every single frame. So this is being called every single time. Every frame it updates, and it's grabbing the mouse position, the mouse X position, and using that, feeding that into the angle for these cosine and sine values, which we talked about, and that's how we're getting the camera position to move. Okay. All right. So now I want to do something with a player, and for the player we're going to use a cylinder. For a cylinder, I think you specify like the radius and the height. Yeah. It's still using the chessboard texture, so I will change that to, I'll just give it a fill. Make it blue. Cool, okay. So unfortunately, there's no way to specify the orientation of a cylinder. So I think we're just gonna have to, you basically in P5 you call like either translate or rotate, and what that really is doing is it's rotating like the entire space. So the whole frame of reference gets rotated, and we can continue drawing new 3D coordinate systems, so we can keep our head about where we are and what context we're drawing in after we perform these rotations. So for now, let's look at this. We're going to want our capsule to be upright. So I'm going to rotate about the x-axis, it looks like. So we'll rotate x 90 degrees. Good. And then we'll bring this down to a reasonable value. And it's being drawn at the origin, so we want to move it up so it looks like it's flat on the plane. So we're just going to move that up by, in the z direction, before we rotated. If we do this after we rotate, then we'd have to think about what direction we would be moving it in, because it'd be different. It'd probably be the y direction. So here we can just do 25. Now that just moved it up 25, as you can see here. This controls the height of it. Now, just to show you what I was saying, if we were to move this to after the rotation, you see it's moving not as you might expect. And that's because since we've changed the orientation by doing this rotation, we need to look at what happened to our coordinate system. So our coordinate system after the rotation now looks like this. So moving along the z after we rotated is not up and down anymore. So yeah, it's pretty much just something to keep in mind when you're doing this stuff, and it can help to draw 3D coordinate systems. So it can be so helpful that I'm going to write a function for it called frame. And we can give frame one argument n, which is going to be how long we want the arrows to be. And inside the frame function, I'm just going to put this, whoops, copy. Cool. And then we are going to use our parameter n right here. And if we wanted to, we could add another value for w, which will set the weight. Sometimes you don't want to get too fancy because then it can just be things to have to remember, like what everything is. But that's why comments are helpful, so I'll just say n is length, w is stroke weight, which you could look at it and also probably figure it out pretty quickly. All right, so now we do frame of 100, stroke width 5, and we get our frame. Sweet. So I can replace all this with just frame, maybe like something huge. So we have some huge coordinate system that will be our global coordinate system. And I'll make that have a skinny stroke weight. And then now we can see the frame after rotation. Cool. So now instead of doing what I did there for demonstration purposes, I'm going to translate. It doesn't really matter, but I'll translate before just because why not? And we'll translate 50 because this cylinder is 50. Actually, we need to go 25 so that it's flat against the bottom. And then another thing I like to do is give it a fill of like with some transparency. It can be kind of nice to orbit control is no longer on. This is working.